Georgie's grief, explored through his deep emotional turmoil and the ways he processes loss, is a central element in the dynamics of his relationship with Mandy in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage. Grief, often an intense and unpredictable experience, can test even the most stable relationships, and this can be seen in the way it affects Georgie. In their journey together, Georgie's grief is not just about mourning a loss, it is about discovering himself, navigating his vulnerabilities, and ultimately trying to find a way back to the love and connection he shares with Mandy. However, the question remains, will his grief ultimately end their relationship? The complexity of grief and relationships. Grief, by its very nature, is a deeply personal experience, one that often doesn't have clear-cut rules or a timeline for healing. It varies in intensity, duration, and expression, and how it is handled by individuals can shape their relationships in profound ways. For Georgie, grief is not something he can simply get over or move past quickly. It lingers and affects how he interacts with the world, including Mandy, the person closest to him. The emotional distance he begins to feel, the anger that occasionally surfaces, and the moments of vulnerability that seem too intense to share might push Mandy to the brink. However, these are also the moments that allow for personal growth. At its core, grief in the context of a relationship often challenges the partners to not just support one another but to also learn how to communicate better, navigate emotional distance, and be patient with each other's weaknesses. Mandy, for her part, may find herself caught between wanting to support Georgie while also feeling neglected or unsupported. Relationships thrive on reciprocity, and when one partner becomes overwhelmed by grief, it's easy for the other to feel left out or isolated. As Georgie's grief evolves, it will inevitably put pressure on the marriage, leading to moments of tension, but also potential growth if both Georgie and Mandy are willing to confront these challenges together. Georgie's personal struggles with grief. For Georgie, grief isn't just an emotional response to a loss, it's a tangled mess of guilt, confusion, and frustration. As a character, he may have experienced past losses or personal struggles that color how he reacts to the current grief. The way Georgie handles his grief might not be healthy at first, it could come out in ways that surprise both him and Mandy. This could include pulling away from the relationship, shutting down emotionally, or becoming irritable when Mandy tries to help. There's also the possibility of Georgie trying to mask his grief, pretending to be fine when he's far from it. His reluctance to open up could exacerbate his feelings of isolation, not just from Mandy, but from everyone around him. In the face of his grief, Georgie may also experience a crisis of identity. Who is he now that he is grieving? Is he the same person Mandy married? Grief forces individuals to re-evaluate their lives, their priorities, and their relationships. Georgie's sense of self could be altered in profound ways, making it difficult for him to be fully present in his marriage. He may struggle with how to move forward, unsure of how to balance his grief with the love and responsibilities he feels toward Mandy. Mandy's role in the relationship. On the other hand, Mandy's role is just as crucial. She, too, is dealing with the effects of Georgie's grief, and her emotional journey may mirror his in certain ways. Mandy may try her best to be a supportive partner, but over time, she could start to feel the strain of constantly having to shoulder the weight of Georgie's emotions. The imbalance in their emotional connection may create feelings of frustration, loneliness, or even resentment. She might begin to question whether she can continue to hold the relationship together while Georgie is emotionally absent or distant. However, Mandy's resilience could also be a source of strength. If she can recognize that Georgie's behavior stems from his grief, she may find ways to support him without losing herself in the process. Her own growth, as she learns to navigate her feelings and communicate effectively with Georgie, might be what ultimately saves their marriage. But it's not an easy path. Marriage is about both partners being able to lean on each other, and if Georgie is too caught up in his grief to offer Mandy the support she needs, it could create an unbridgeable gap between them. The potential for growth or breakdown. The potential for growth in Georgie and Mandy's relationship lies in how they choose to face the grief together. Relationships can weather many storms, but grief is a particularly difficult one to endure alone. If Georgie and Mandy can find a way to communicate openly about their pain, frustrations, and needs, they may be able to transform their grief into an opportunity for deeper connection and mutual support. Grief can teach empathy, patience, and understanding, qualities that, if embraced, can ultimately strengthen a relationship. However, if Georgie continues to bottle up his emotions, distancing himself from Mandy or refusing to confront his grief head-on, the relationship could suffer irreparable damage. Grief can be an overwhelming force that strains even the strongest of relationships, and if Mandy feels like she's fighting a battle she can't win, she may start to question whether their marriage is sustainable in the long run. The relationship might also face external pressures, such as advice from friends or family, societal expectations about how grief should be handled, or even financial strain if Georgie's emotional state affects his work or responsibilities. These pressures could further complicate things, making it even harder for Georgie and Mandy to stay on the same page. The healing process. A long road. Ultimately, whether Georgie's grief ends his relationship with Mandy depends on the choices they make as a couple. Grief is not a linear process, and it doesn't have a definitive endpoint. There may be moments where Georgie feels like he's moving forward, only to fall back into moments of deep sadness or anger. Mandy, too, will have her own process of healing as she navigates her role as a supportive partner while also addressing her own emotional needs. However, if they can reach a place of mutual understanding and find ways to communicate openly, the relationship can survive, even thrive, beyond the grief. Relationships are defined not just by the good times but by how couples face the hardest challenges together. If Georgie and Mandy can find common ground in their grief, they could emerge from it as a stronger, more resilient couple, ready to take on whatever comes next in their journey together. In conclusion, whether Georgie's grief ultimately ends his relationship with Mandy is uncertain. Grief is a powerful force, but it doesn't have to be the end of the story. With patience, communication, and a willingness to face the darkness together, Georgie and Mandy's relationship could survive the storm of grief and emerge even stronger. The key will lie in their ability to navigate the complex emotions that come with loss and to support each other through the pain, finding a new way forward in their shared life.